It was the same morning as every morning in Suburbia. The sun rose, warm and orange, over neatly trimmed lawns, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air. Aiden Anderson rubbed his eyes as he pulled the curtains aside, revealing the identical houses that lined Maplewood Lane. Every house was a perfect replica of the next, each with a white picket fence, a two-car garage, and a garden gnome perched on the lawn. Aiden had moved here with his wife, Emily, and their daughter, Lily, 3 months ago. They had left the city for a quieter life, seeking peace in this seemingly idyllic neighborhood. But there was something about Suburbia that gnawed at Aiden, something unsettling just beneath the surface. The days blurred together in a monotonous routine, and the neighbors, though friendly, seemed oddly distant, as if they were going through the motions of a script they didn't quite understand. The first sign that something was wrong came when Lily's new friend, Tommy, didn't show up for school. Aiden asked around, but no one seemed to know who Tommy was. "Must have moved away," said Mrs. Perkins, the elderly woman who lived next door. But Aiden had seen Tommy just the day before, playing in the yard, his laughter echoing down the street. How could he have moved so suddenly, without a word? The following week, Emily began to change. She spent hours staring at the television, her eyes vacant, her movements mechanical. When Aiden tried to talk to her, she would respond in monotone, her voice devoid of emotion. It was as if she were losing herself, slowly becoming a hollow shell. He found her one evening, standing in the backyard, gazing at the sky with a look of eerie serenity. "Emily, what's wrong?" he asked, his voice trembling. She turned to him, her eyes cold and distant. "It's just the way things are here, Aiden. We all belong here." The words sent a chill down his spine. What did she mean by that? And why was she so calm about it? He decided to dig deeper, to find out what was happening to his wife, to the neighborhood. One night, unable to sleep, Aiden ventured out into the quiet streets of Suburbia. He walked past the identical houses, each one dark and silent, until he reached the end of Maplewood Lane. There, hidden behind a tall hedge, he discovered something that shouldn't have been there: a door. It was a simple wooden door, painted red, with a brass doorknob that gleamed in the moonlight. It stood alone, unattached to any building, just a door in the middle of nowhere. His heart pounded as he approached it. Something deep inside him screamed to turn back, to run, but he couldn't. His hand reached out, almost of its own accord, and grasped the doorknob. When he opened it, Aiden stepped into a place that defied all logic. The air was thick with a dense fog that obscured everything. The ground beneath his feet was soft and yielding, like walking on a thick carpet of moss. Strange shapes moved in the fog, shifting and whispering, their voices echoing in his mind. He felt as though he were being watched by countless unseen eyes.
Aiden's breath quickened as he ventured further into the fog, the oppressive silence weighing on him. He heard voices, familiar voices. Emily's laughter, Lily's playful giggle, and even his own voice, distant and distorted, like a recording played in reverse. The fog began to thin, and through it, Aiden saw figures moving, trapped in an endless loop of mundane tasks. There was Emily, hanging laundry that never seemed to dry. There was Lily riding her bike in circles, always turning, but never changing direction. And there were others, neighbors, endlessly mowing their lawns, watering plants, or walking their dogs.
He realized with horror that these were not his family and neighbors. They were their shadows, their echoes, forever repeating the same actions, lost in this twisted version of their lives. Aiden ran, desperate to escape, but the fog closed in around him, tightening like a vice. He stumbled back to the door, but it was no longer there. Instead, he found himself in a small room, the walls closing in. A figure emerged from the shadows, a tall man in a suit, his face obscured by darkness. "Welcome, Aiden," the man said, his voice smooth and cold. "You found the truth. Suburbia isn't just a neighborhood, it's a waiting room, a place where souls linger before they move on. You are all in purgatory. No, Aiden whispered, shaking his head, this can't be real. The man smiled, a cruel twist of his lips. You don't remember, do you? None of you do. You died, Aiden, a car accident, a few months ago. Suburbia is where you've been ever since, waiting for your turn to move on. But some souls resist, clinging to the familiar, unwilling to accept the truth. And so, they remain here, trapped in their routines, their minds slowly unraveling. Aiden's knees buckled as the memory of the crash flooded back. The screech of tires, the blinding headlights, the sound of metal crumpling. He had been driving, with Emily and Lily in the back seat. They had been heading home after a late-night dinner, tired but happy, but then, in an instant, everything had changed. The world had gone dark. Is this all there is? Aiden asked, his voice trembling. There's more, beyond this place, the man replied. But only if you're willing to let go, to accept your fate. Otherwise, you'll remain here, until you fade into nothing. Aiden looked at the man, then back at the shadows of his family. He felt a deep sorrow, a longing for the life they had lost. But he knew now that it was time to move on, to let go of the past and face whatever lay beyond. I'm ready, he said quietly. The man nodded, and the room began to dissolve around him. The fog lifted, the shadows faded, and Aiden felt a sense of peace washing over him. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, he was no longer in Suburbia. He was somewhere else, somewhere bright and warm, where he knew Emily and Lily would be waiting for him. As he stepped forward, the last remnants of Suburbia disappeared, and with it, the memory of the life he had left behind.